You're listening to Marketing News Canada, Canada's #1 show featuring the brightest minds in marketing, PR, and digital advertising.
Thanks for everyone for joining us for another week of Marketing Jam. I am so excited because I have been following our next guest's books and podcasts for a very long time. And it's a real honor to have them both on the show because I at first didn't know if I was going to get one or two. And today we have a bonus. We have two guests on the show. This is actually our first time ever having two guests at once in the show. So without further ado, Scott, Alison, thank you for being here.
We can actually have a real jam session.
Yeah, there you go.
Unless we're doing White Stripes or something like that, we couldn't jam with just two people. So,
and for sure, each of us talks as much as a normal single person, like doubled at least. So now you have both of us. We're never going to stop talking.
Mega jam session.
You've made a terrible mistake.
You've erred. You have erred greatly right now, my fellow Canadian. And,
And for those that maybe don't know, but your origin story, which I think is so cool for the two of you, happened digitally.
Yeah, it's actually right beside Alison's head behind her on the wall was the first tweet I ever sent her.
Okay, you put it in a poster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's just a piece of paper.
I just printed it
on
off
the wall.
In the printer. Yeah, let's simmer down now, right? It's COVID. The budgets are slashed. It's a piece of paper we printed from the printer. Yeah, that's not. Don't get crazy on me now. But yeah. It was Twitter. It was a 2009. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I couldn't want to check the date on the poster, non-poster.
Yeah.
And it happened to be for me, it was the recession and my agency was done. It was kaput. I was bankrupt virtually. And I had formed UnMarketing years earlier because I believed in community. I believed in building relationships. I believed in positioning. That's what it was about. UnMarketing originally, about 19 years ago, it was created with the tagline, UnMarketing, how to market your business without spending a dime. Because everything that I talked about and would teach was about positioning stuff. So I was getting articles placed in journals or industry things and message boards. And so none of that was money, it was time. Except what I learned my first lesson in marketing was when you make the tagline, how to not spend money, nobody wants to spend money hiring you, which is fascinating. And I should have known that right out of the gate. But so anyways, the agency was going great. We made viral videos and then everything just tanked. And I wasn't doing any marketing during the time. I wasn't building the following or anything else because I was just arrogant with the agency. And so I joined Twitter in April 2008. And I just did it like every other marketer, right? I'm like, here's a new thing. And I'm there and I'm like, what? I don't really get it. It wasn't my thing. And I made the mistake that a lot of us marketers make, which is if I don't enjoy it personally, the first time I try it, it has no use to me or my clients or the industry, which is a huge mistake to do. So in January 2009, I decided I have nothing else to do, literally.
Yeah.
I'm going to go give Twitter another try and live on it for 30 days. Live. Yeah. Live. So I had 1,200 followers at the time. Yeah. And I tweeted that month 7,000 times.
Wow.
And I went from 1,200 followers to 10,000.
Okay.
And it was the proof of concept of community. And back then it was any of the original the OTs, the original Twitter folks from back then knew when you came on Twitter, it was more like that Cheers kind of feeling that you walk in, everybody's like, hey, and you get on there. And there wasn't necessarily celebrity based or brand based. It was a lot of geek based and a lot of stuff where people liked this technology. And I had really connected with a lot of people on the platform. And since I was a parent, it was other parents and Alison happened to be connected in that kind of group. And I saw her tweet about a lemonade stand in Burlington, which is a town beside us and actually my hometown, Burlington. And so I sent a tweet to her, which is again on the wall here, which is, I said, no rain over there. Don't make me hop on the QEW and for some lemonade. My little guy just said, can we go get some? In hindsight, it's a very creepy tweet. I think. If we do a post, like an analysis, a decade or so later, I'm amazed it worked.
But we kind of had, we had friends in common and colleagues in common. So it wasn't please strangers on the internet, don't ask me if you can come over to a lemonade stand. It was in context was very safe. He had references, which I checked. And Yeah. So that's how we met. I was running a maternity lingerie company called Nemmies. And so in Canada, a lot of women will take a year or so like for maternity leave. And so Twitter at the time was huge for new moms and for pregnant women. And so I really joined Twitter for my business. Like initially that's why I joined, and I was sharing information about my business, and I've always loved to write. And so we were writing for a website, a parenting website we were both writing for, which was kind of the connection.
Yummy Mummy Club, Erica M's website.
One of his references as well.
And also a reference of mine that I was not some weird stalker asking for lemonade.
And so, Alison, were you writing about kind of lingerie and keeping I was
writing a blog. So at the time, I mean, I've always written my whole life, but I was writing for our company's blog. So I was writing about parenting. I was writing about babies. I was writing about I wasn't really writing about nursing or breastfeeding per se, although I did write about that. But mostly it was, just content about having really young kids, particularly in Canada and Southern Ontario where we were. And so I would write about all different kinds of things about parenting. And then it became just wonderful. Like I found a real community of other parents and I was home a lot with my kids. And from the time my first son was born, the internet I kind of fell in love with the idea of being able to connect with people virtually. Yeah. Now I kind of wish I could connect with people in real life a little more. Yes. But that was kind of when I fell in love with the internet, I guess, as people say. And then, yada, yada, yada.
And after the first tweet, where did it go from there? Did you respond, Alison, or
we met? So we chatted back and forth a little bit. And then at the time we were both running our own businesses, like I said. And so Scott was working a lot at a coffee shop, which a lot of people do who own their own businesses. And so we met and we ended up sitting on the outdoor eating area of this coffee shop for about 8 hours and talking nonstop. As I mentioned, we chatterboxes that we are. And and then we haven't really stopped talking since. It's sort of one long conversation, I guess. That's true. Maybe a romantic way to say it. But that's where it started.
That is amazing. And tell me about the first book that you did together and kind of how that came to be, the impetus of that.
So it all goes hand in hand with the whole, meeting story and that world. So I had gotten the book deal. So, living on Twitter, part of that was I have part of my background was in the music business as well, and understanding deals and leverage. And obviously anytime somebody comes to you is a much better, obviously a leverage position. And that's part of what UnMarketing was positioning. So my goal, I have an allergic reaction to trying to justify my value to another company if they're going to make money off me. It's something that, it makes me angry. Yeah. It makes me that I'm going to beg for you to allow me to give you my words for, 90% of the revenue from my words or that type of stuff. It makes me angry. So I just don't do it. Yeah. And so I just build a following. And you always had learned, especially in book publishing, was you make enough noise, you build a big enough platform. It's the same as a music business, though. There's so many similarities there where they don't want the unfound author who hasn't written a word or hasn't written a note in music. Or they want ones who already have platforms and followings, but have yet to make a book. So I got a call. I was in the parking lot that's down the street from here, pulling into just a convenience store, and it was from Wiley and Sons Publishing out of Newark. And it was Shannon Vargo, and she called and said, "Why haven't you written a book yet?"
Nice.
And I said, "Why haven't you offered me a book deal yet?" She said, "Touche." And Shannon was the editor for all 5 of the books with them. And so I started writing UnMarketing. And I picked the name UnMarketing. One of the reasons I picked it was I thought it would look good on a book cover.
Okay.
When I originally...
Always a marketer first.
Yeah, always a marketer first. Always about the hooks in my brain, no matter what. And so we told them, we're like, I just picture a brown paper bag crumpled up with a stamp on it. And that's what the cover came out. So fun fact about that, when we first got the first proof of the cover, and I was so proudly, I posted it on Facebook, and I'm like, is this that moment? Is your book cover, your first book a cover? And I put it up there. It's just a big stamp. It says and then marketing underneath. And the first comment in the first post of my first book was United Nations marketing.
Oh no. So what did you do?
And then I got just the anger. So people wonder why I get so angry about a lot of things. You can just see, if you just get the history, it's just little things that tell you where the anger comes from. So anyways, I start writing the book 18 days before it was due, 60,000 words to the publisher because I'm a moron. And as you know, how long it took you to book this podcast, I'm not exactly the most focused person on things. Mm-hmm. So I started writing it it's like a college essay, just a bit longer. Mm-hmm. And I just start, and I'm flailing. I'm trying to write. I'm just doing this kind of spastic, kind of just bunch of words and stop, just random thoughts. Just
and you guys are and you're together at this point, right?
No.
We're friends. Okay.
So we're talking on. This is a throwback. We're talking on BlackBerry Messenger.
Yeah, BBM.
Yeah.
Come on.
Fellow Canadian, of course. Only other Canadians cheer for BBM like that. Only.
So we're BBM back and forth, and she's like, "How's the book coming along?"
Yeah.
And I said, "I'm screwed. I've got 38,000 words in my word count, and let's just say it's high school level word count here. Like we're talking about, we're adding white font on white background, like all this stuff." And I had to try to get from Dragon Naturally Speaking software. It was a train wreck of a transcription. And she said, "Why don't you send it over to me and I'll take a look?" And I'm like, "Okay." And I just sent it to her. I had no idea she was a writer.
Yeah.
And I sent it to her, and so she starts going, and I said, "I'm out of words. I owe them 60,000. I don't even have 40,000. And I've said all the words on the planet. There's no more words. There's no more things." And she's like, "Well, when you said about social currency, what do you mean by that?" And I'm like, "Well, you know what it means." She's like, "But explain it to me like I don't know what it means." And I start talking, and she's like, "Uh-huh." And just starts adding stuff and fleshing it out. Fleshing it out.
Yeah.
And then we turn it in, and it went from this written vomit of a concept to a beautiful word lasagna.
Wow. No, that's beautiful.
Perfect with the right amount of cheese.
Are you hungry?
I am. Pasta. So that it saved it. And of course the fear of going to a publisher.
Yeah.
A lot of times for anybody who's like that quote personal brand type of thing and is very unique style is losing that into the book. And Alison took it, and not only did she put it in the voice, she just made it even better, because written and spoken words are different things.
Yeah.
And that was it. You just like, my God. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know what would have happened if we didn't meet. I would have still gotten the book deal.
Yeah.
That was already in the process when we met. The book would have been an embarrassment. It would have been an embarrassment.
I think probably that speaks to a problem in the book industry. Yeah. Like when you were talking about it and you're like, oh, you need to have a platform or publishers. Well, I mean, yeah. So you also have to be able to write a book, which is something that then we did it together.
But so
and those Dragon Naturally Speaking things are my nemesis. Is there a plural of nemesis? Any voice to text for that purpose? Like if you I'm not talking about like if you voice text is helpful in studying or learning or understanding or consuming, all that I'm not talking about that, but I mean the idea that people like to read the way that we hear when somebody else is speaking is just not true. It is a completely different, in my opinion, obviously, unless you can speak your book, which maybe some people can. I know I can, and Scott wasn't able to. That it's really nice to start with words on paper, I think.
Yeah.
Screen, whatever.
And then, 6 books later, wow, it's still going. And that was one of the things about that was building that platform. And I remember because when UnMarketing came out, I had sent it so it was coming out in the fall. This is actually the last month was the 10-year anniversary of UnMarketing.
Wow.
And
crazy.
Yeah, nuts.
That is amazing.
And so it was coming out in the fall. So September 2010.
Yeah.
That's when the book was dropping. And that previous June, I put out a tweet and I said, "Who wants a stop on the Unbook tour? Pre-order 100 copies, fly me there and put me up, and I'll come." And 30 cities ended up signing up.
Wow.
And that's why we're a good team, because I can't do that.
Right. Yeah. But that's it. And that's finding that mix and that balance between that. But the thing was, I think it was 40 cities put their hand up. 30 actually ended up doing. And half those 30 cities were events run by people who had never run an event in their life. They would just wanted to support the book launch. So it was a real testament to community. But here's the thing. The reason why you had to fly me there and put me up is because I was broke.
Yeah.
I had no money. I had nothing. And I had a prepaid credit card just to check into hotels.
Wow.
I was trying to come out of that recession, and the people were just like, "We got you. we got you. But I believed in the concept. I believe that if you believe that business is built on relationships, make building them your business. And I remember UnMarketing was coming out at the same time as another book, which was almost like the polar opposite, which was just about being flashy and loud and always, and a friend of ours had said, well, it's going to be proof of concept, which one sells better. And yeah, the other one didn't sell very well. And because I literally was on the road proving it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm talking about, I spoke like different venues, like I did a car dealership in Edmonton at the evening when they closed.
Cool, actually.
It was amazing. Yeah. It was 100 people sitting around and then some real sweet Buicks, just around the shiny in the showroom. I did a loft space in Nashville. I did
that bar with Sarah with the Stein.
I did the Shiners.
It was pretty cool.
Right. The Shriners. It was a bar in Wisconsin decked out for Oktoberfest. I got a Stein still upstairs. I got it from it. And I did the BB King's, Chuck Berry's stage in St. Louis, the Duck Bar on his stage. It was incredible. And it was all based on 30 individual people saying yes to this. And some of them were AMA chapters, some were social media club chapters, tweet ups. That type of thing.
Oh yeah.
But and then after that, we threw a tweet up in Vegas and 100 people showed up, not from Vegas.
Wow.
Like it was so awesome and crazy. And the stuff where it's just like this, we believe in this. And I think that's what attracted a lot of people to it, because it was against certain other ways of getting a word out there of marketing. It wasn't buy or goodbye.
Yeah.
It was, hey, let's hear it. This is what I know. This is what I think can help you. You think you can help me and stuff. Okay, maybe I can use your services. Maybe I do this. Maybe I buy. I think we still believe in the fact that we buy from people we know, like, and trust, especially in a service-based business, especially in a knowledge-based business, especially when you're dealing with an individual, real estate, insurance, finance, legal, accounting, all that type of stuff. It's a huge part of that is building trust.
And fast forward the other 5 books. Why don't you name those quickly for those that haven't discovered your other collection?
So we have UnMarketing, and then we have the Book of Business Awesome and Unawesome, which is a flip book. It goes one way. It's a positive stories. Flip it upside down. It goes the other way. The printer was ecstatic about printing that book. It won a book cover award. Yeah, it won the New York Book Expo book cover award. And then we have Unselling. We have QR Codes Kill Kittens.
Yes.
Which is a picture book of business screw-ups. It was said as a joke, kind of, and Shannon at Wiley said, "Let's do it." Which is
work of a book I've ever put together.
So that's the book that introduced me to you. Really? That was the book, because someone gave it to me. They bought it for me because they knew I grew up with a cat and loved cats and always would kind of connect the whole cat on the internet thing. And they'd like, you got to read this book. And that was my introduction.
That's amazing. That was it. Well, let me tell you, I stayed over that.
Okay. And they also knew my rants, because I just was I would drive by and there'd be a QR code on a billboard and a QR code on a t-shirt. Yes. And I was just so blown away that people the trend and the shininess of the QR code when it came out just blew my mind.
Do you understand? Do you have any idea right now during COVID, how many people message me saying, well, what do you think about it now? Because people are using QR codes, because of it being contactless
but those are practical reasons. It's not for marketing. It's like you need a menu.
And I said, if you go back or read the book or listen to any talk with the QR code ran, what is said, except that if it was built inherently into the camera, it would be a whole different story.
Plus the book, if you read the book, it has a point. It isn't just pictures. Like I hate. It was so much work. Yeah. And there's like a point, and each chapter has a reason. And so it's sort of hidden underneath the funny pictures of cats.
Yes.
So we go from that, which is proof of if you sell enough of your first book, you can do whatever book you want.
Nice.
And then there's, sometimes we're just messing with them. Like, what about this one? They're just like, maybe. We're like, we're just kidding. And so then we have, Unselling, Unbranding, the Un trilogy, UnMarketing, Unselling, Unbranding. And then Jackass Whisperer was the 6th one that we decided we published with a hybrid publisher out of Vancouver, Page 2 Books.
which is very cool. Very cool. Now, and then tell us about you've had a podcast for a long time, and then you changed the name of the podcast with the book, and tell us about that transition. What was that like to change the brand there?
Yeah. So,
changing it back?
we changed it back.
Yeah, we changed it back.
Okay. So it's gone back. Okay.
Yesterday. So
it was for the book launch. Was that what it was for?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So UnPodcast has been our show. We've done about 309 episodes that have been put out. And it was it was really called the business show for the fed up. And we're just kind of talking and ranting about whatever we want. And it's actually, there's some real good lessons inside that show about community as well. Yeah. That, so we used to record it in a studio. We do it once a month because I was on the road so much. Yeah. And we do it once a month, record 4 or 5 episodes, have a whole film, like a video production crew, 3 camera shoot, audio engineer, everything, because we wanted to do it right from episode 1. Because that, the whole point of the books and the show was to try to get me on stage. Yeah, everything was pointing towards that. That's how we make revenue. That's the entire point of is positioning, and that whole, for lack of a better term, it's painful. That thought leader type of stuff, where it's just positioning your content. So we did the UnPodcast part of it for a long time, but as it was going, we'd make kind of a running joke that anytime I'd say something that was off-putting, which is often, one of us would say, we just lost one of our 7 listeners. Because we always joke we had 7 listeners. And so the audience actually ran with that, and they started calling themselves one of the 7.
Nice. That is awesome.
It got to the point of momentum where I would show up to a gig, and I would say every couple of gigs, somebody would come up with a t-shirt made with "I'm one of the 7."
Aww.
Yeah, it was really
they really felt a part of the community and part of the audience.
Podcasting's so cool.
It was such a different medium.
And I feel like we have like the loyal, like podcasting seems to be the most loyalty. Like it's such an intimate, like it's in your ear, and you people love doing it when they're working out. Like we have people say they're walking their dogs, they're working out, they're driving or whatever. I just think that there's something that breeds a lot of connection from listening to people.
You were in my car with me quite often. It's what it felt like. And the 2 things I remember most is you'd always have paper. I always would this remind me of your show, and then someone named Emma. There's always talking about Emma email marketing. Like
a big shame for because we have to read off the paper.
You prove that sponsorship works.
Emma, totally.
But the lessons we learned from audience engagement to brand partnerships and sponsorships to doing a show, and I just. For the best for us, and we changed it to Jackass Whisperer to kind of promote the book that when it was coming. And to
play around with it, I think a little. Like we sort of wanted to focus on those sort of stories, and it just seemed like it was a different show for whatever reason, even because that was the space we were in around promoting the book, or we wanted to see where that kind of stuff could go. And it was fun. It was kind of fun to change it a little bit.
But also the whole point, the thing about the show was. We loved doing it. Like it was like, there was never a time that I ever said, either of us said it was, oh, we have to go record the show. There was never have to. Yeah. It was always, we get to. And
you're such a great team. Like, I feel like it was, you actually like enjoyed each other's company, which in turn made it like a fun conversation to listen to.
I am absolutely smitten by Alison. So
that's so cool.
Do this on the podcast.
But I just, she's my favorite person.
No, it's great.
I'm taking it down a notch. Don't worry. She's my favorite person. So when
but it's okay to celebrate a good marriage, or like a good partnership. Like I think so many movies and TV celebrate the opposite. Like I love that you guys like each other.
We do like each other.
But the way that it's just such a great for us. It sounds weird because I'm complimenting us, but it's because it's just the personality kind of blend and the differences that make the blend well together. That I'm mostly ridiculous and Alison is hilarious and brilliant, and those things together means we're hilarious, ridiculous, and brilliant together. And it just works. We have that, but also there's a huge mutual respect. Yeah. So there's that she is never the butt of the joke.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at something, and now you have to tell a story. So,
go.
Okay. So, so I get a little shy when Scott compliments me. Mostly, he does it from stage. Sometimes he obviously not in the last couple months, but I feel like you should tell the story since you said we were smarter and
I will. Yeah. Okay. So I'm out.
About why I make that face when he starts complimenting.
Yeah. So out in the, we're in the prairies. I'm in Saskatchewan doing a gig years ago to digital marketers there in Regina. And it was like, it was great. It was like 450 people. Very awesome. And so I was speaking in late afternoon. I think I was closing. It was like 3 or 4 o'clock. 90% of my keynote. So I did 60, 70 keynotes a year for the past 10 years. So this has been on the road doing conferences. 95% of those are opening keynotes. Just because of, well, you know what I'm saying? Just because of this whole thing, the being a maniac on stage and waking people up, making them laugh.
Yeah, you got to shake it up, disrupt a little bit.
I'm a professional wake up call in the morning. So this is near the end of the day, plus it's more west than where we live. So the time zone's different. So I wake up, and what I usually don't do, I don't usually eat before I speak, because usually I'm speaking in the morning and I can't have if I have breakfast and I go on stage, it's indigestion. It's not nerves.
You need to provide all the details.
You do need them all.
But this is great. This is helpful.
So anyways, I actually get a 90-minute massage at the spa because I got like 6 hours and I'm up. Deep tissue, because what's wrong with that? So I don't need deep tissue massage. A couple hours later, I'm about to go on stage and I think I'm going to die. Like I'm either going to have an out of body experience or I'm going to pass out because I have not eaten. I've got all these things.
Building up excuses.
All these things. And I get up there and I start talking and it's out of body. I'm when I'm on stage, I'm usually talking to myself anyways in my head, kind of where I'm going next. But this was just like, oh, you're screwed. I was just like floating away from myself, but I made it. I got all the way through to the end. And the second last slide, I show the on podcast slide. Because it gives me an excuse to have Alison up on the slide and me talk to her on the slide and praise her, her wonderfulness. And I start talking, and I usually said that's Alison. She's the funnier and the smarter one than me. But in my delirium, I combined the words. I said, that is Alison, and she's the farter of us. And
the audience started tweeting to me.
And then I turned, looked at the audience. I said, did I just call my wife a farter?
And like 20 people from Regina immediately got Twitter on their phones out and started tweeting to Alison.
Because they're digital marketers.
Your husband has called you a farter on stage.
If it was dentists, I could have gotten away with it.
Totally.
Maybe we don't need to praise Alison. She's fine. She speaks for herself,
But seriously, back to this show is that because nobody enjoys it more than us. And we hope that then goes out to the listener if we're enjoying going back and forth with that kind of banter and the stories, then I think that reflects to the audience.
And what were you guys like the year and the date that you guys launched the show? Was it just iTunes at the time, like the Apple Podcast?
Yeah, it was. So we did it 2013 ish. And it's amazing because we just switched it all over. Once all this, we kind of took everything in house, so switched the site host, our email service provider, and our podcast host. And so I didn't even know what it was. And it was like most, it was iTunes or RSS feed. At the time, but it was a combination of like Burberry, Libsyn, something else, and all these things. So I I couldn't even do it. Like we had somebody else do it. And then this time I'm like, okay, that's it. And we just tear everything down, pulled everything out, and switched it all over to Simplecast. And it was just so much easier. But back then, it was a lot. It was hard to start a show. And that was 2013 isn't like early in podcasting either.
No, we were late.
We were late according to us. We were. That's why we wanted to make episode 1 like we had already done 100 episodes because we were late to the party to us. And turns out not too sure about that anymore. But I still find that stuff fascinating now. I find the podcast world extremely fascinating. I find what Spotify just announced with Anchor was incredibly interesting about using music in the shows but with rights and stuff too. So we love the medium, but we stopped the show when COVID shutdown started.
Okay. And
that was a decision. And because we've promised both with the newsletter and the show, with any content we do, that we never force frequency. That is one of our tenets. That is one of our things on the wall. It's on the front page of the new UnMarketing website is all the statements of what our marketing is. And we promised never to just force something out. And you risk losing audience, you risk losing this, but you'll know anytime a show comes out or a newsletter comes into your mailbox that it's going to have something of worth.
Plus it was also the same. Like when we were chatting, I can't remember, it might've been before we started recording, but we were chatting about, practicing setting up this where we're recording from now, which is basically like a virtual studio that we've set up for Scott so that he can do, webinars and virtual talks. And part of pausing the podcast was also to say, look, we invested money in it. We had people that we were working with, and we had to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? What is this going to look like? How is it sustainable? In the end, we own a business, and so we just took that step back. We weren't sure what we wanted to talk about. We weren't always in the mood to sit down and like have a conversation about a marketing. Like it didn't feel right. And so we've always sort of let ourselves do that. And also because it doesn't respect the audience. If we're just, you don't want to listen because it's Tuesday. You want to listen because we had a conversation that was worth listening to. And we had a lot of work to do. Like we had a lot of work to do. And moving the podcasting over was part of that, right? We had to, Scott's learn and spent time doing courses and learning how to do stuff so that we were able to do this. So, and I think that's really important to take your time.
And the show is a different type of where it's personality driven.
Yes.
I don't mean that necessarily literally, but I do when it comes to it's Alison and I talking. Okay. So there isn't guests, there isn't other type of things or segments where it's us and it goes off our flow.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we have to be able to feel that can go about the topics at hand when there's topics so much bigger than necessarily somebody doing a marketing mistake or something else that we're just like,
it seemed petty.
Exactly. We couldn't put our heart into it. Yeah. And that's where we know, well, then why are we doing it? Like we literally are the bosses.
Yeah.
Like it's our companies. We don't have to do anything. And that's been a great reminder. It's one of the most helpful thing Alison done for me in the past 7 months when I get in my head about business stuff is just looks at me, she says, we don't have to do this show today or this thing, this now. Yeah. And it takes you out of it for a second thinking and the forced frequency then, because that's important before all this was us not forcing it down people's throats, saying because it's Wednesday. I've always said it in all the books and on stage was nobody ever read your newsletter or blog post specifically because it was Wednesday, right? Nobody ever shared it because it was Friday. It's because it resonates and there's content that actually speaks to the audience that asks for it.
It's amazing. In Canada, we have, Strategy Magazine, and they put out their e-newsletter and kind of tell what's happening in the ad space. So we've got The Message, which is a new one. I feel like they both are great kind of news channels, but I feel like you always took those kind of mainstream news channels and flipped it on its head and just gave like thoughtful commentary and just said, hey, what if we thought about it differently? What if we poke some holes here? Whereas those other channels, and that's what I've loved about it is that it's kind of like, hey, what if we looked at things different? What if we flip things on its head all the time? Which again, it's not the most comfortable show to listen to in the sense that it's not like you're just going to give us a bunch of stats and facts. And here's the news of the week,
We've been kidnapped.
Yeah.
If that happens, call somebody.
Yeah, that's our code. Yeah. If I start talking about the gross domestic product of of this, you're just going to be like, we need to save them. We need to go get them.
And so because you do that and you kind of go against the mainstream, was it hard to get like an Emma to be excited about a show that was, and why?
No, because we didn't, same as the book deal. We never approached a sponsor.
And I think that's just that has to do with the position that we were in to do it. So that isn't advice. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like this isn't advice. I don't think that what happened with us was that because of the platform that we had, and because the way the podcast was and a series of events where someone saw Scott speak and then connected to somebody and they liked it. We always talk about this, like even with the book deal, we talk about this, that, we talk about things from the position that we're in. That's not necessarily advice that other people could have. We were very lucky with that. And because of that, we were able to really manage and negotiate in that relationship with Emma, and that they were our only sponsor. So we were able to do special things. Scott would do a talk for them. And, we had it wasn't like a podcast sponsorship. It was a partnership where they had Scott do talks and live events happen with the two of us at their space in Nashville. And so I always worry about that, like, because I think it's more complicated than simply we waited for a sponsor, because it is hard. It's hard to get sponsors for shows, and we all need to like support what we're doing. For us, the podcast was a piece of marketing for getting Scott on stage. So we saw it, we paid, it was an expense for us, a marketing expense to get Scott on stage. You know what I mean? And then when the sponsorship came along, so we could sit back when the sponsorship, it was awesome. and we learned a lot from having that partnership. But I think there's a uniqueness to the situation that might not transfer.
And it depends, because you have to set out that the strategy or the purpose of the content. So if it's if you're going to do a podcast, why? Well, is it you want to talk to interesting people in the field? Do you want to build relationships with people in the field? Do you want to expand your brand? Do you want to make money? All those are all different things. They're not just one or the other either. But the point is, we were very clear about what we were hoping to do, which was the ability for us to, like, literally it went from us just talking in a coffee shop saying we should record this type of conversation to wanting to do the show. And it was positioning though. So when we weren't looking for sponsors, we weren't trying to get them, and it was positioning. So we put our best quality foot forward initially. And that's also where a brand sees that and says, because the brand wants their logo on things, right? Brands love logos and want to see our own things. Obviously they do, because when they're sponsoring, they want to have their stuff. That was very intentional. So although we never went to look for it, we also said, the same reason why we want people to consider me to speak somewhere will be the same reason why a brand might sponsor the show. That was the importance of making the brand the way it was on all the channels that way. So it was hiring the people, it was finding the right people to do it, and then and there was a cost to that, but that was built into what we were doing when it came to marketing. So our marketing spend was producing the show instead of doing an ad campaign or doing some YouTube pre-roll type of stuff. It was, why don't we spend, and it came out at the time to about $1,000 a show. If you break it down, and 70% of that was the post-production video editing. But it was a show. And that was where we decided we didn't want to spend money on, although I believe in AdWords and I believe in the analytics, and I think it's brilliant nowadays, so much better than what we used to have. It was, why don't we spend the money on the brand stuff doing something we love? And that can only help. It also
made sense for what Scott does. I mean, it just makes more sense for people to hear the way he expresses it. Exactly what you explained. Like, if you can, what they want to see is that take, right? That flipping something on its head and seeing it differently. And so here's this forum we have. We will spend the money. We'll make it look as good, so that when you see Scott on stage, it was in line with what you saw on the podcast. And then we demonstrate what he's able to do, which is what makes the keynotes and stuff unique. So it was sort of a perfect marketing thing. And then when the sponsor came along, we were in just a really lucky position where we could be like, they already like everything we're doing. So we really didn't have to make a lot of concessions, and we were able to just have one sponsor as opposed to having to mitigate, like some kind of shared time relationship.
And we did have a couple of attempted, because we didn't, I don't know if you were listening then, but we signed on with CBS for a while.
Okay, no.
And CBS signed us years ago, before Emma, before everything else. They signed because they launched their new podcast platform, and they asked us to join it.
I do remember that. It was a weird intro. Remember the intro? It was like rah, rah, rah. It was like all, and it was promoting all these other shows, and then I had to sit through it to get to your show.
Terrible.
Yes. Okay.
Complaints, actually.
I do remember that. That is hilarious.
So there was a book will come out one day about this, but CBS was like, it's like anything else. Traditional media.
Throwback. Wow.
Right. Traditional media versus new media. Okay. Traditional saying, well, we'll just come over here and do the same stuff in a new media. And so it was the ad insertion and all that type of stuff. And so the selling point to us to go do the show there was that their whole ad staff across the country would be selling ads in the show, and we get a split, and like, okay. And we decided to do it. And so we got one, and it was another company that makes business cards, and they're like, they want to sponsor this. And I'm like, cool. This company I used for my first business cards too. It's a perfect fit. And so I did a whole fun little story in the middle of the show. And then the show came out at 9 a.m. Like it usually get launched at like 9 a.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. And by 9:30, we had an email from the agency saying, hey, the sponsor isn't really happy with their clicks. And we're wondering if you can move the ad to the front of the show. And I'm like, it came out a half hour ago. They're like, yeah, but it's done. It's a half-hour episode. I'm like, do you know what podcast is? Like, have you ever, are you new to everything right now? And I'm like, and you said clicks. What are they clicking on in their ear? Like, I'm like, what click? How are you tracking it? And they're just like, well, and I'm like, bye-bye. And then
they knew how to sell.
Yeah.
Like, we wouldn't have ended up with, I don't think we would have ended up with maybe like if you did an event or whatever with Emma, it could have happened anyway, but they taught us, like, we used their sheet.
Yeah. So the rate, it was the rack rate. It was the rate card that we used to determine what we saw Emma, but we generated the Emma sponsor though too. Right. But the problem, so what happened when we moved to CBS with the show, they messed up the transfer. And so we went from our audience and because you had to switch, they had to control the source, the feed of the show.
Yes. Yeah.
And instead of doing the right redirection, they just dropped it, said whatever. And we lost our entire audience.
Yep.
Wow.
We had to start building them again. How do you reach out to your podcast audience when you no longer own that feed? It's gone.
Yeah.
And then when we decided to break away from them again, they messed up the transfer back out. So we've had to build our audience 3 times for the show.
Yeah,
wowzers.
And it was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. But even there's even lessons in the Emma sponsorship, because that initially started as a premium show sponsorship, which is they were the main sponsor of the show. And we loved working with them so much. They were so great to work with. We just kept adding things. And then because it was the show and then me speaking at their event, that's what it started as. And then it turned into multiple webinars, Facebook Lives, us going to bringing barbecue and books and talking with their customers in Nashville. And it was a real testament to when you partner with, whether it's influencers or brand or thought leaders and whatever term you want to use. That although you're paying them, and that's a good thing, it's a wonderful thing. The better you treat them, the more they will do for that pay, usually as a human nature. Now there's exceptions to that, but it was like a bizarro relationship. They kept saying, what more can we do for you? And we're like, no, what more can we do for you? And we're like, and everything was just like, and the biggest thing for them though, is they allowed us to keep our voice.
Wow.
So there was no, right to, cut a show. There was no, and we did the live reads for Emma in the middle, and we always segued it from whatever ridiculous story we were talking about. Who won't murder you, Emma, playing off that. Right. But it became ingrained with it. So then we had our last live event there. Their entire staff had shirts that said Emma is one of the 7.
Aww.
Right,
that awesome. Is really awesome.
And you don't lose that. So people that were at Emma who've now in different places, we're still in touch with them because we built relationships with the individuals, not just the brand.
Yeah.
And then now they're just good people. So we just have more friends in great places.
I think it's really important though that to think about that we've lost the audience twice. I think with any content, like books as well, podcasts, anything that you're making, to make sure that you still want to make it, even if you wake up one morning and some switch somewhere went off and you don't have any of your followers anymore. Cause that's it was upsetting. And it was a lot of work, as anyone who's listening or knows podcasts at all, getting one person to listen is like a miracle. And so it's hard to get people to listen. It's hard to build that audience and then to see it gone. But the thing was, we didn't do the show because like this many people were listening. It could be 7 people. And that was part of it, right? 7 people was cool. And doing that and kind of presenting that meant that it built even more loyalty because people knew like, we love the show too. Yeah. When people have been sending us messages since we paused it, like we missed the show and we're like, we missed the show. Yeah. Like we're just figuring it out. Like we also, and I think that that's really good when you're building anything or making anything. Totally.
Well, it's a provocative show in the sense that like, I'm trying to think of my own. I went through your CBS time. I didn't know that's what it was called during the awkward, but then I think at one point I missed it. So I went to just find it and then probably just resubscribed.
Yes.
So that's just trying to think
what happens. Yeah. And
that should be the goal, right?
Yeah,
for anything. The goal should be someone will they'll like it. They'll remember it enough that they'll be able to find it. But
I also felt a kindred spirit where I was like, I felt like you were an advocate to say, hey, Canadians aren't all just polite and passive. Like we have thoughts and you came with intelligent commentary that was like, you alluded to like, you're John Oliver or you're kind of like the bringing in the news, but with like that poke, which is what I loved. Yeah.
Good.
Well, that's it. And it's coming back.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just in conversations.
So you guys managed to pivot as far as like, using that term, but it's like you managed to keep speaking and tell me about that. You managed to keep doing keynotes and keep engaging with audiences. And what have you done to make that happen?
Well, it's just been the realization that that you can still get the message across or still get to do certain things that I love to talk about.
Yeah.
In this way, if you're willing to adapt.
Yeah.
If you're willing to pivot. And the problem is when you can't be that way, when it was realizing, okay, there's a point where like I wanted to be a keynote speaker on stage since I was 12. It was been literally my dream. And so that part, and I've been doing it for the past 10 years. And so I'm saying, okay, so then when I was getting friction in my mind about doing the virtual way, I never liked doing webinars before this. And it was like, okay, so then what can you do in a way that makes it valuable to the clients? And then that you actually feel that you're doing something well. And that was it was the point of being able to pause and learn and realize not only that I don't know everything, I don't know a lot. And it was diving in saying, okay, then figure out what you need to figure out, not by piecework, not by trying something and saying, well, if this isn't working, YouTubing the problem, but going through the base of understanding lighting, sound, streaming, video. I'm a geek. I'm a tech geek for a while now too. And I've loved video and audio and everything. The reason why we have these mics and this equipment is because we had it before, luckily. Everything kind of shut down, but it was learning it properly, because my big hesitation was, look, if they're paying and their entire thing's virtual and that gets messed up on your end, it doesn't matter if there was a throttling issue on my end, something at the server or something on their end, I dropped the ball. And it's not something that you take lightly. So it's been a lot of learning and a lot of researching that way.
Are you doing them typically live or pre-recorded?
This thing. So I prefer pre-recorded, but the client prefers live. And the thing is, though, it's not that I prefer pre-recorded because I don't want to be live. It's that 95% of the issues happen with the live stream of it. And so I rather record it in HD, get it to them. They can play it from the server. So at least you don't have the up and the download issue for it. And then I would be on there live for the Q&A. But we let the client determine that, whatever it's going to be. But again, we haven't done a huge push for it, because also it just doesn't feel like the right time. There's so much going on. There's so much going down, and there's with what's going on in the US and this is a huge moment in time. And with COVID, it's just like, who wants to learn about metrics? It just doesn't feel the right way all the time. So, when stuff comes in, we certainly sign it up and get it going, but it's also got to be right for us to push it forward when it feels right for everything.
So you showed me something before we started the show. Can you show that again for those that are watching the video, your cool PowerPoint thing? Because I've never seen that before. So
part of this is figuring out what Scott was talking about is like, so in terms of live, so Scott has learned how to do this. So you can see how you'd see a slide. We were talking about how do we recreate the experience of like Scott on stage. So when Scott's on stage, he uses his slides kind of as cues. They're not usually word heavy. Like they tend to be images or a little bit. So like, this is kind of an example of a slide, and then he can talk or record it, but talk, and he can gesture to the slide. He can look at the slide.
It's the best thing about this is when I'm doing the talk, so it's just my head in the circle. My monitor is here. So I'm looking at the monitor right now. So I'm not looking at you. Like our DSLR, this is about 8 feet away from us that I'm pointing at right now where I'm talking to you. But when I'm doing this, it looks like I'm in the slide talking to the point. I'm looking at minutes viewed, 6,983,000 right now. And it looks like I'm looking at it on the slide. But you only get that through reps and through speaking. And also you're talking about a guy who didn't even change his PowerPoint deck for 9 years when it came to mostly format or function of it. It's just like, it just get the visual up there and let me do the talking. And now it's like, well, what? So like even the circle you're looking at right now with the shadow, with the depth of field in it makes you feel a little more, there's still a visual separation in it, but also it's not point of distracting. And that again,
it's
through
all he
text.
Talks about. Audio, sound. So all he notices cuts and edits in movies. I didn't ask.
Amazing.
I didn't ask when the cut was. It's very important to him.
I switched the wrong thing around. Sorry. All right. So that's now it's just like everything. We were watching something last night. I turned to one of the kids. I'm like, that was a good cut. It was a good edit. They're like, what? I'm like, never mind.
It's the tools, right? Like people want live stuff because they think that that's like the most engaging, except that sometimes live causes more problems because of streaming and upload down the speeds and blah, blah, blah. Or if different people are getting it in different spaces at their homes, they're seeing it at slightly different times. Like it's not really so we try to encourage the like pre-recorded for the main part, but then Scott is still there to do a live, like Q&A is great for live. Things like this are awesome where we can like talk to each other in real time.
I'm doing one in a week or two, a real estate one for Richard Robbins real estate. And I'm going to a studio.
Yeah.
Everybody's like far away, and it's like me, the only person in the room, and then everybody's in this hermetically sealed other room with masks, and I'm like, it's just everybody's trying to manage.
Yeah.
I think really everybody's trying to manage right now.
Yeah.
And it's not working from home right now. It's working during a pandemic, and everybody's trying to figure it out. And there's industries, not just the event industry, not just, at the conferences but tourism and events, healthcare, entertainment, like everybody is hit. Most people are hit, and it's really hard where every gig I did, there was, for the big events, like my entire business was based on large indoor events.
Yeah.
So my events were like 500 and up inside, but that and everything where there's a crew of, there's 100 people part of that event, from AV to event staff to hotel staff. Yeah. And each one of those is gone. And that's a huge,
stuck with that.
And, but I haven't been home for a month straight as being a dad. And so that part has been to be able to see the kids for so long. And it's been a wonderful thing to be able to see that in this sea of gross and crud. It's been nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I do need to address something that those that are watching on video, and the number you said, those that are just listening, what are those numbers from? The stats that showed up on your PowerPoint, the 13 million. Yeah. But I'm sure people need to.
No, it's the millennial one.
Oh, cool.
Okay,
Here, he'll show you. One second.
Let me figure this out. Hang on a second.
Hey, look.
Yeah.
Hey.
There, you're.
I had my own circle.
No, I can do it.
And is this done in PowerPoint? What you're doing right now?
Yeah. So it's in PowerPoint and then exported as a PDF.
Okay.
So then each slide is kind of like, so I never did it before too. I don't do builds and slides. I do separate slides for each build.
His slides are usually white screens with black, like basic text on them, like a word. Like they're not, he doesn't use.
So this is part of, when I talk about metrics, so this is like the millennial rant thing.
I've seen this video. Yeah.
So
PRSA.
So then, exactly. So that's the video, that's the talk. And I put the clip up and I got a 250,000 reach. And I talk about how, it's reach doesn't mean anything, but then we letterbox the video like this. And it was same clip, but letterbox with what old people mean when they say millennials, stayed up the whole time. 30 days later, I sent out the same clip with this letterboxing, and it was, instead of 250,000, it was 32 million reached, 13 million views. But here's the thing. So I talk about that. People are like, oh, okay. So the key is letterboxing. I'm like, nope. And you go down to the metrics where it's not 32 million. It's not 13 million. It's not even 4.8 million over 10 seconds. It's actually 3.4 million over 10 seconds with sound on.
And look how many people watched it with the sound off. It's just him.
Yeah. 1.3 million seconds. I'm just an angry mime. I'm just flailing. But that again, but the part of doing that, and part of that was out of spite, because once in a while somebody will take a shot at me and they'll be like, well, you know what? You don't actually do things. You just talk. And I'm like, I know. Awesome. Right. Right. Like I just get to give my opinion. Isn't that the goal? Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, all right, I'll make this go viral.
Yeah.
And I went and pulled the clip out of spite and put it on, but it didn't go viral enough. And I'm like, well, that's not enough to smack somebody around with. So I went and changed it and analyzed it. So all out of spite gave me my own case study to talk about to fellow marketing geeks. And I think it's a real important thing, because a lot of people in marketing, I really don't think people in marketing don't understand vanity metrics. I think most of the people in digital marketing despise vanity metrics. And the problem is I'm trying to give them tools to equip to tell their boss or their client to stop chasing them while still leaving the same advice of, look, if they still want them, then show them. These numbers look great no matter what way you splice them. But for us as actual marketers with actionable data, that we want to be able to say, this is what it means. So then we have an actual seat at the table properly, versus being the second fiddle to sales a lot of the times when it comes to those type of things. And I think that's important. So a lot of my stuff is preaching to choirs, but it's preaching to choirs so they can go sing the gospel to somewhere else. Yeah. That's what the goal is for it, really.
Yeah. Wow. And as far as like kind of apps and resources and kind of like books that you'd recommend, what are maybe some things that you're like, man, marketers out there, I know you got your own anthology, but what are some ones that you look to? What are some apps or resources or books you say these are awesome?
I am telling you, I have been just diving into this for months now, being a practitioner of this type of stuff. So it's like, there's so many great things, but the key to all of it for me of learning all this stuff has been curated newsletters.
Okay.
I am telling you that I have not gotten more value than curated newsletters or a couple of Discord servers of stuff. So things like, Morning Brew or The Hustle, The Information, the Trends Report. Like every time it's literally, it's made me feel like it's like 1998 again. You get an email, you're like, whoa, like you're excited about it, because when they send stuff, they send great stuff.
But good ones.
Paid ones?
No, The Information and the Trends Report is, but The Hustle and Morning Brew is not.
Okay.
And they're mostly curated. So there are a lot of them. The Hustle is a little more article based, to be more writing in it, but it's just like, we think this is cool. We think you'll think this is cool too.
Yeah.
And it's Dave Pell's newsletter as well. I'm forgetting it right now for some reason, but some really great ones that way that lead me to the other things. There's a water and music Discord from Patreon about the music industry. I found more stuff through that than I found through most things. And then it just leads to another thing. And then of course, Product Hunt and those type of things of just like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Where, we got an email today about some trending topics, and you just like, and you just start looking at them, and I love it. It's fascinating. And so many tools, and having like a 10 year more gap between being a practitioner. You come back in, you're like, oh, this is so much better. For so many reasons, all the tools. And I'm like, what's a Zapier? And you go and start connecting things together. You're like, oh my God, you could do this now. So it's been ecstatic. But I've learned because we've changed ESPs, hosts, and podcast platforms. It was learning, about, wow, you actually can do this. Oh my God, you can do moving to ConvertKit for email. You're like, and you do all these other things you can do. Moving to Simplecast has been a dream of stuff as well. And it's just really cool to see a lot of the stuff where you live.
That's awesome.
You've had your head down here.
I know my head been doing all this for a very long time.
I've been doing something else.
So Alison, I got to ask, especially being a parent, TikTok from a parent's perspective, I'm sure you've been on there in that world and seen it, but also from, your thoughtful commentary on it. What are your thoughts on TikTok?
I have a TikTok account, but I don't actually put anything on TikTok. For people my age, like peers, for me, I feel like I'm embarrassing enough to my kids without having to put it on the internet.
Yes.
And I didn't have to do anything. They changed, not me. I'm the same. I think that we've seen some really cool social movements come out of it, and kids doing incredible things. I think any way for youth to connect right now is wonderful. I'm not one to teach for our children anyway, to teach them to be afraid of social. We talk about, I think the same things that can happen in social can happen off social, at least for our children.
Yes.
And so we try to teach them, that, never to send something that you wouldn't want your teacher and me to see, never to do all those kinds of things, to treat people a certain way, to, if there's a problem, they know that they can show us and we'll talk about it. So those kinds of basic rules, especially, for our youngest, who is the most into TikTok, and she loves it, and she loves the makeup stuff. I know that there are a lot of scary things on social for kids, and I think for us, the most important thing is to talk to your kids, and not to talk to your kids like about what you want to talk to your kids about, but like, for example, one of our kids is really into anime. She likes TikTok. She watches anime stuff. She loves anime. And I mean, that's not something I ever knew that I was ever into, but I've made an effort to we watch shows together. We talk about it. We're like, it's like Scott's really great with talking to the kids about music and what they're into, and like whatever it is from the time they were 3 and it was, whatever, to Rubik's Cubes and Lego, to every movie, to stupid Spy Kids, like just try. I think for me anyway, it's just been so that they know I understand TikTok, so that they know that they can talk to me about what they're into and it's less scary for me as a parent knowing that, I understand what they're doing. It is really hard right now because our kids are all doing online school. And so there's certainly a much higher uptick in them looking at screens. And while I used to be less concerned about it before when they didn't spend their entire school day also looking at a screen. So sometimes I worry about the sedentariness of it. But in terms of the content, I mean, I think our children need to be educated about surveillance and their information and their data and protecting themselves. And I don't think that's unique to TikTok. I think there's some ageism a bit where you say like, oh, it's just TikTok, but LinkedIn would never do that. Well, I've seen like the worst things on LinkedIn and the worst examples of treating people unkindly and racism and all these things happen on those spaces. So to me, it's sometimes people say that about TikTok because it tends to be a younger demographic using it. And I don't like that. I think the same dangers happen in all social media in terms of protecting themselves and their data and their privacy.
Wow.
So we try to educate them around that. Like, what does it mean when you have your phone in your pocket? What does that mean to privacy? What does that mean to money and for your friends and your family and your community as well? So yeah, I guess it's a bigger answer probably than you wanted. I think there's a lot of potential.
It's great.
Anytime youth can collect, I think has a lot of potential. And I think that adults should just talk to their kids and see what they're looking at and be involved with whatever they're interested in, even if you don't like it at first.
Yeah.
I totally forgot to mention TikTok as one of the best resources. I've gotten more entrepreneur links because of who I follow on TikTok, tools and shortcuts and stuff. Like it's been it's been better than Instagram ever was with it. Like people just get into these entrepreneur TikTok world.
It's surprising.
It's a tool, right?
It's a tool.
But you also, I think that surveillance and the data piece is very important. And especially older kids need to understand that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And in the context of understanding also where the surveillance and stuff is in your current apps and stuff, where some people are like, well, you can't do that because of this. And I'm like, you're literally walking around with this, and this. Yeah. That is doing the same thing.
And body image stuff and just all of these things.
It's the world. You're opening the world up no matter what. And every time you do this. Yeah.
Wow. So where can people find you now? If they want to hear more, learn more, hire you to speak?
In our basement, you're not allowed to come.
Please come. We have very strict social distancing policy.
Yeah. So we have a brand new site. We redid it too. Like it really was purposeful for us to do the way we did it. It was less us up front. Yeah. More the concept, but also saying this is what it is about. And if it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, you don't have to be here. Yeah. And it was UnMarketing and integrity, authenticity, community. Those are our three pillars. And it was really revolving around that, a much more purposeful type of way of doing things. So UnMarketing.com is a great place. Sign up for the newsletter. It's always free and always wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yes, it is wonderful. We've only put out one of the new ones so far. So
that's awesome.
We thought it was wonderful.
But we're getting started.
We're getting there. Yeah.
That's all. Well, thank you for being on the show. It's been a real treat and a long time coming. So
wait a second. Where can listeners find you?
Oh, they don't need to find me.
To this show.
But then you never plug your own thing. So
no. I'm here. I'm your host. So the
host doesn't get any love, man. So what are you up to these days?
No, I learned so much. I feel like I'm like this student, like this Padawan every episode. So it is a treat.
Oh, you're doing just fine, Jedi.
Yeah, thank you.
You're just fine.
Thank you.
With the Star Wars statue behind us here, by the way.
What is that?
The Gamorrean Guard, man.
Oh, I see a Joker, but I didn't.
Why isn't Han up?
Let me see here.
It's square footage.
I'm totally gonna have to go upstairs.
Oh. Wow. Yes, that is incredible. Well, I think without further ado, we're going to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you both, Alison. Thank you, Scott. It means a lot. And I'm excited for the day when your show is up and rocking again. And if it's on another server, I'm going to find it. So
don't worry. We did the shift properly this time. It's been confirmed, verified, and my receding hairline is even more receded because of it. So
awesome. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on Marketing Jam. We'll see you next week on The Jam.
Thanks for listening to Marketing News Canada. For more episodes and other great stories from Canadian marketers, visit marketingnewscanada.com. All episodes are recorded at the Jelly Marketing Studio, thanks to our producer, Chris Penner, and editor, Travis Jeffers.